What if I told you that creating joy was the most powerful business strategy you could have? Today, we're going to do a deep dive into a boutique hospitality brand that built its entire economic engine on that one simple idea. We're going to break down their complete blueprint from the core philosophy all the way to their day-to-day execution.
So this is it. This is the core idea that everything else is built on. Joy is profitable. Now, this isn't just some fluffy, feel-good mantra. It is their central operating principle. They figured out that in the vacation rental market, the feeling you create for your guests, well, that is the product.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, joy is profitable. Sounds nice, but how does that actually work? Financially. It all starts with what they call the economics of joy. This is the why behind their entire strategy. It's a really simple reframe. Just stop thinking about things like square footage and start focusing on human emotion as your #1 asset.
And this whole philosophy, it didn't come from some business school textbook or a complicated spreadsheet. Nope, it came from a single real-life moment. A guest walked into their very first property, stopped dead in their tracks, and just went, "Oh, wow." And right then, that was the light bulb moment. People don't rent specs on a webpage, they rent a feeling.
And that feeling, it translates directly into this powerful, self-reinforcing financial loop. It's beautiful, really. It kicks off when you create a joyful experience. That joy leads to glowing 5-star reviews. Of course, those reviews boost your search rankings, which in turn increases the property's perceived value. And what happens then? Your revenue just grows organically. It's a sustainable system that feeds itself. And look, if you think this is all just feel-good theory, check out the numbers. A staggering 66%, 2/3 of their properties are designated guest favorites on Airbnb. That's hard data that proves focusing on joy delivers measurable, top-of-the-market results. It just works.
Okay, so that's the why. We get it. But now for the how. How do you actually engineer that wow moment and do it consistently? Well, they do it with something they call the boutique method. It's their practical, repeatable process for turning that philosophy into a reality every single time. At the very heart of their method is this really simple but critical distinction. In their world, there are only two types of properties. On one side, you've got a wower, a unique, design-led space that creates its own desire and demand. And on the other side, the cookie cutter. It's generic, it's forgettable, and it's always forced to compete on price. Every single decision they make is about creating a wower.
So let's be super clear about what a wower actually is. And spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with luxury or size. It's a space that triggers an immediate emotional response, that feeling of uplift and delight the second you walk through the door. That is the gold standard they aim for, because that's what makes a property truly memorable and desirable. And this concept is more critical now than it has ever been. Because of a huge market shift, Gen Z now drives the most Airbnb bookings. And they book with their eyes, usually in seconds, while just scrolling on their phones. They're looking for an experience, not just a place to sleep. So, in that world, a wower is what stops the scroll. A cookie cutter? It just gets scrolled right past.
Now, they didn't just dream this philosophy up overnight. It was forged over 15 years of real-world experience. They started with just one cottage and then grew by listing pretty much every home they could, which led to inconsistency and a lot of strain. The crucial shift, the real game changer, came when they realized that curating for quality, not just chasing volume, was the only way to build a sustainable business.
So let's get down to the brass tacks. This is the what, the specific, non-negotiable checklist they use to figure out if a property has that wower potential. They call it the wower blueprint.
So what's on the checklist? First, a property has to create that emotional lift we talked about. Next, the amenities have to be proportional. So if it sleeps 8, it better seat 8 for dinner. It absolutely needs those Instagrammable moments. Strong outdoor living is a must. And of course, it has to avoid blandness at all costs. And finally, from a business perspective, it has to have serious revenue potential.
And even the smallest details can have a massive financial impact. Take this for example. Their data clearly shows that a 4-bedroom home where every room has its own ensuite bathroom earns 15% more than one without. It's a simple formula, really. Reduce friction, increase comfort, and people will happily pay a premium.
But here's the thing. You could have the most perfect property in the world, one that ticks every single box on the blueprint, and it still might not be enough. Because the final and honestly the most critical element of this whole thing is the owner's mindset. A perfect house with a misaligned owner is a partnership that's just destined to fail in their system.
This belief right here is at the very core of their success. You can have the best property, you can have the smartest pricing strategy in the world, but if the relationship with the owner is built on mistrust and friction, the whole thing just falls apart. Trust is the ultimate performance multiplier. And the difference is, it's just stark. It's night and day. An aligned partnership focuses on long-term value and trusts the process, and that leads to higher revenue and those 5-star reviews. A misaligned partnership? It just gets stuck in micromanagement and constant friction, which results in price pressure and, you guessed it, guest complaints. So ultimately, this whole blueprint leaves us with a really powerful question that you can apply to pretty much any business. Are you building a commodity, something that's just forced to compete on price? Or are you creating wowness, that special emotional connection that generates its own demand? The answer to that question could change everything.